There are 6 principles of the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Improvement Act, and the ones that I'll be reciting are from the textbook. So it's the textbook order. Number 1 is that it is a free, appropriate education, which means the services that a student needs are provided at no cost to the parents, and that the school will provide whatever the student needs in order to succeed. Number 2 is least restrictive environment, which means the student will basically be in the general education classroom as often as they can be, or mimic a student without disabilities educational experience as much as possible. Number 3 is having an individualized education plan with parents involved. So a student's plan is prepared by an IEP team, and that team must include the child's parents. So that way there is parental involvement and family say in the matter. Number 4 is that there is non-discriminatory evaluation. So that means when assessed, tools that discriminate based on race, culture, or disability are not allowed. I remember when I read the textbook, it mentioned how an example of that would be mentioning football on a problem, how some children would assume that as American football, like the NFL or college football, but how other students could assume that it's soccer, and that could confuse some students. Number 5 is due process, which means there are formal and informal procedures put in place so that no changes can be made until the issue is resolved and both sides are okay with it. And number 6 is the zero reject policy, which means that no students can be excluded from public school for any disabilities, and schools must find a way to educate them no matter what the child's disability is.
Okay, so now it's my turn. I will be reciting them in the order that they were on Blackboard. So number 1 is going to be the zero reject, which is basically no child should be discriminated against based on a disability, and they should all get access to public education. Number 2 is a non-discriminatory evaluation, which means that all child with a disability should be able to be evaluated similar or at least comparable to a way that a child without a disability would be, as long as they have the proper materials. The number 3 is appropriate public education, which basically means that they are entitled to have children with disability are entitled to attend public school and receive any educational services that have been designed to address their specific needs, even if that means changing specific materials or settings or adding some technology in order to meet those needs. Number 4 is going to be the least restrictive environment, which means that students with disabilities must be educated in a setting that would most likely encourage that student to succeed. Number 5 is going to be the procedural due process, which means that if there's a disagreement according to their special education or their placement within the disability system, then the services that the student receives, the information they must provide in formal or informal procedures that must be followed in order for that student to regain that those accommodations. And then parent and student participation, which is the instructional services and other assistance for each student individually. Their IEPs must be written by professionals, and the student's parents must also be aware of anything that has to do with that student's education.
Okay, I will be saying them how they were in the order of the textbook. The first one is the FAPE, which is the free appropriate public education. That's the students with disabilities are able to attend public school and receive an education to address their special needs with no cost to the parents. And then the second one is the LRE, the least restrictive environment. This is the students with disabilities must be educated in an education setting like those for students without disabilities, which means that special education students should not be separated into different classrooms than their peers. The third one is individualized education, and this is with the parent and student participation, is that in the instruction being delivered and other work must be tailored to accommodate the students' needs according to their IEP, which is the individualized education program. And the non-discriminatory evaluation, and this is where students must be assessed using instruments that do not discriminate according to their race, culture, or disability, and that the student's eligibility for special education cannot be decided on only one test. The fifth one is due process, and this is where that if there is a disagreement concerning a student's eligibility for special education, a specific set of formal and informal procedures must be followed before making a final decision. And the last one is the zero reject, where no student should be excluded from receiving a public education because of disability. And if the school doesn't offer what the student needs, it is their obligation to find a way to appropriately educate them.
I will be reading the 6 core principles of IDEIA from the textbook as well. In the order they are in, the first one is the free, appropriate public education. This education is an education that is provided to the students at no cost to the parents. The next one is the least restrictive environment. The student will be in a general education classroom for most or all of their school day, receiving the education they need. The third one is individualized education, or an IEP, which the IEPs are written by a team of professionals and the students' parents to create a roadmap for educating the student. The fourth one is non-discriminatory education. The student's eligibility for special education cannot be decided on the basis of only one test. The fifth one is the due process. If there is a disagreement on a student's education, they are given a specific set of informal and formal procedures to follow in order to set the dispute of the disagreement. And the last one is a zero reject child fine. No student is to be excluded from receiving public education only because they have a disability.
Good job. We were supposed to check everyone. Are we all good with everyone's responses?
I'm good.
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Good job, everybody.
Awesome. Go us.